Hello, this is Pat Cahill from Pat Cahill Metalworks, and today we're going to make a box ring. And so what we need is a piece of 20 gauge sterling silver sheet. This just happens to work out really nice because this is one of my cuff blanks that I use. Approximately 6 inches long. You won't need it that much, but better have a little more than a little less. And here, you have to get the designs for the box sheet online, and there's a lot of places to get them. But I found a really neat place. It's, let me make sure I say it right. It's this artist, jewelry artist from Santa Fe. His name is Alec, and he has a website called easily-distracted-shiny-objects.com. And on that website, there's a little tool that you can play with to get the size box ring that you want. So you can put in the size of the ring size. You can put in a lot of different variables. It's a really nice tool. I'm very impressed with it. So I'll put that down in the description, a link to that, and I hope he doesn't mind me doing that. I don't think he does. I don't think he will because, he's published it on Gnoskin, and so I think he'll be fine with it as long as I give him credit, and credit is totally due. So here's the patterns that I'm going to use. It's going to be a men's ring, so it's a size 10.5, and our first step is to cut out the two pieces. One will form the inside of the ring itself, and the other would be the outside and the box. This is the outside shank, and this is the inside. So let me start to saw them out, and as usual, I'll either go into fast speed mode or I'll cut. Okay, so they're all sawed out, and next step is I like to make these ends, especially this end, the inside shank, I guess they call it, these ends exactly perpendicular, nice and straight across. You can do that with a file, or if you like me, you use a miter jig. Because oh, sure, I can do it with a file, but sometimes it's not as straight as I would like. So, just put the ends in the miter jig and file them and then sand them down. Okay, so just take off that template, and we just want to solder these two end pieces together. And you've seen this before, but it's a big part of what we do. So just bring one over, bring the other over, and with your hands. We're not trying to make a circle here. We'll bang that out when we get it soldered on our ring mandrel. So now what we want to do is get these things perfectly aligned so there's no gap. Best way to tell that is bring it up to a light. See if you can see light going through. I don't know. I don't think that works for you to see, but for me, I can do it. In your own place, you can also do it. So that looks good. I think that looks real good. Okay, so I'm going to get ready to solder that. Let me get my soldering station up. And we'll do that together. Okay, so that's ready to go. Put some flux on there, joint. It's quite a bit of flux, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat it up so I don't, so my solder doesn't go ding all around the room. Alright. That's when you initially heat up flux. It bubbles a little bit. And the solder chips will move on you. So we're just lightly heat it up. See it bubbling? Yeah. Now put a nice chunk of solder on there. Of course now it's not flat. We're deal with it. There we go. And that's flowed. Let's just pull it to the inside too. There we go. So we got a good solder joint there that goes into the pickle. Quench it first. All right. Okay, so that's been pickled. Now we're round it out using our ring mandrel, which. So if you just put it on there, bring it down, use a nice soft hammer. I'm going to use a rawhide mallet here. And this should be nice and round. That's good. Nice round. You can check the size at this point. It's going to get a little bit bigger. So it's about, just about a 10 right now. With all the work we do to it, banging and stuff, it'll bang out a little bit. So like I said, I want it around 10.5. Plus we'll be sanding and filing in the inside to get that all nice. And that'll take off a bit too. So our next step, and this is actually, well, in my opinion, this is the hardest step. Nothing else is really that difficult. But we have to put these two pieces together. And that's why I made it a little bit smaller in the beginning. Alright, so, and we have an index for the bottom that will meet with this seam. And these two indexing points is where it will stop from being soldered, or we'll stop flowing the solder past those points. So right now I'm just futzing with it. There's really not much I can show you here, just keep at it. You might want to take off, if that's a big solder blob, you might want to take off some of that. I don't think it's that crucial right now. Again, I'm just trying to make it as nice a match as possible. I think that looks good. You can even hammer it a little. And bring it out. And then you might have to use one of my most hated things. Something that I just don't like, and that is binding wire. A little bit of binding wire on the top could help quite a bit. So I'm going to do that. Again, this part is all just fiddling to get it as good as possible. You can also, as for a little bit of help, you can get some strong tweezers, locking tweezers, strong ones too. And use that to hold this right here. So it's easier to add the binding wire. So I got that nicely held there. And now I can work on the binding wire. I'm going to fiddle with this off camera. I'll show you what it's like when we're solder the joint after that. Okay, so I sit screw with the binding wire. I really don't. I hate that with a passion that burns. But these titanium clips work quite well, and you can get them, I think, at New Concepts, the same people that do the saw. So if you haven't tried those, I definitely recommend them. They can be very useful. I'll heat this up first so I don't have my chips flying around. Again, just a little bit. And we'll put the solder chips on. And really what we're doing here is we're not too worried about being exactly perfect. We just want to tack it so that it's all, you have your first glue points, or I'm calling them glue, but solder. I'm just trying to tack it. We'll actually add more solder to the other side. And actually, pick soldering might be a way to go in this instance, but let's get these two going. Where's my pickle? I will. You can see that the heat is deforming our ring, but that's okay. We have it tacked. And the bottom is nice, so that's what we really care about. So that goes into the pickle. Now that could have happened with binding wire too. It's not just using these strong titanium clips. So I'm not blaming it on that. And again, that's no worries as long as you have it nicely tacked on the bottom. Okay, that's out of the pickle. It really did distort it quite a bit, but we're just bring it back down here and round it back out. What I don't want to do is break my tacks. So if I do, it's not the end of the world. We'll just have to start over from the last step, not totally over. So start bringing that around. Now the hard part is you can't really get in here, so you just have to keep hammering it down. Until you have it nice and round again. That's about right. It's a little bit on the top. I want to get that out of there. Okay, so that's all rounded out. And we're ready to solder the front part and the back part together. So flux it. Both sides. And we'll start with the side we worked on in the beginning. And then we'll go to the other side. So liberally use your solder. Do realize that a lot of these, you're not going to see any of these seams. Okay, and we'll flow that. And then we'll do the other side, same thing. I'm squeezing it to get it to meet nicely. I don't need to do it on this side though. Okay. That's a pretty good solder there. Then we turn it over and do the other side. Probably be better not to hold this. I'll just put this down. And I'll have more control over the solder. Of course our piece is cooling down, but that's alright. It'll heat back up pretty quickly. Well, that guy doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to be part of the piece. I think we have enough on there, so. And there's going to be a lot more solder coming soon. So. As you see, this is not the outside, any part that you will see. But we still want a nice fusion of these top and bottom parts. Alright, that's good. So into the pickle, and I'll be back. Okay, so the next step is to sand these sides so that they're nice and flush. So when we solder on the plates, which you'll see in a second, it's a nice surface contact. So I did this side already, and I'll do this side. Depending on how well you did it, it just goes quite quickly. You can see it's getting there. So I'm going to bring this over to my sanding bench or table, and I'll do that, and then I'll bring it back and show you, and we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so we sanded that down so that we would have a nice contact between the surface and this plate. So I'm going to cut out portion of the plate that I need. Just saw it out. Let me just get a something to mark it with. It doesn't matter. Yeah, that'll give us plenty of room. Okay, so I'll saw that out and get ready to solder it. And I'll be right back. Okay, so I fluxed the surface and put solder chips all the way around. Here, all the way inside. The only place I don't put solder chips is in this area right here. And that's because, in this case it probably wouldn't matter, but in some cases you might want to fill this area with some sort of epoxy or something, or to make, you know, the flourish of the ring. I'm not going to do, I'm going to put a stone on it. But that's one way of doing this ring. You have a nice hold there, depending on how you make it all. I think I can show you one that is like that. You wouldn't want to put solder in that area if you were going to finish it in a way. I haven't put the stone in yet, but I think I will. Alright, it's flowing nicely. Let's get it flowing inside too. And we're good to go. Let me put that in the quench and then the pickle. And let me grab these seeds here. This is the first time I've ever made one of these things, so. And now it's the second that I'm videotaping. So here it is, the ring. I actually have a stone that I'm thinking of putting in there. That might be nice, but we'll have to get that stone out. If you don't put a stone in there, you have this sort of look. And that, like I said, can be filled up with different colored epoxies, or, you know, something, acrylics, lots of things. You actually can make it so that a special material where you can have it so that you can put a stamp. It's like a stamp ring for your seal or something. So there's a lot of things you can do with box rings, with this particular box ring, or just box rings in general. And actually box rings in general are just so many different types. So that's what I was thinking for that one. And it's about my size, so there you go. But on with the ring and how we finish this up and how we do it a little bit differently. So let's see, is that ready? No, needs a little bit more time. I'll be right back. Okay, so that's out of the pickle, and the next step is to actually pierce out the inside and around the sides. So I'll just use a center hole punch and drill a hole. Okay. It's nice and taut. Just doesn't make that sound because it's got this round on it. So just go around. Don't get greedy and try to get too close to your edges. reason we do this is that, well, I guess we could, if we don't have a hole, and we try to put the other side, if it's a totally enclosed space, you could, the air inside will heat up when you're trying to solder it and will blow up. Won't really blow up, but you know, expansion of air is pretty powerful. Okay, so I'm going to go all the way around like I'm doing now, and also around the outside too, and then I'll get back to you. Okay, so now we're going to solder the other side onto this, and you might want to give it a quick sanding just to make sure it's all nice and flat like we did before. It should be flat, but I'm going to give it a quick sanding, and then I'm going to put the solder chunks all around, and I'll bring it back for the firing. Okay, so now we just flow this solder on the other side. And there goes my solder chunks. I didn't heat it before I put them down. Okay. I'm just gonna have to cozy them back up to the sides. There we go. Slow, nice. All right. Okay, so the next step is to pickle it, poke another hole in it, do the same thing, piercing around, and I'll do that off camera, and then I'll go on to the next step. Okay, so we have it all sawed out, and I haven't finished it at all because I need to do one more solder step. I want to put on the top of this, and what I've done is I've drilled a hole in the top, in the center, and I scribed on the bottom side, which we'll get rid of when we file it off, so I know exactly where to put it so that my hole will be in the center. It doesn't have to be in the exact center, but it's nice if it is, because we're going to put a bezel around it and put a stone on top, so nobody will see that hole. But the hole is critically important for the soldering. Otherwise, as I said before, the gas will expand and it just won't solder. It'll like try to pop itself off or do something weird. It's not good. So I'm going to get this set up for soldering, and when I have that ready, I'll bring you back. That's just going to be put the flux on and put the chips around, solder chips, so you're not missing much. Okay. There we go. Okay. So now we have our top on. Should be centered, and we'll check that out. The next step is to put on a bezel, and we'll go through that, and then will be to clean it up. Actually, I'm going to clean up, I know I said that never clean up until the very end, but we're going to clean up the very top, at least get a good idea of where the center of the top is, so that when we put the bezel, it sits nicely and is uniform and symmetrical with the ring itself. So I will be back when it's done pickling. Alright, so that's been soldered on, and what I'm going to do now is do just a rough cutting on the sides, sawing like I've done many times before already. But other sides. I'll be right back. Okay, cut that out. Now I'm just gonna sort of get close. What I want is, I just want a good view of the top. And when you have all these like different pieces that are coming out of different ways, it looks kind of wonky, and you don't really, you can't, your eye can't really settle on the middle of it. Still looks a little wonky, but that's because we haven't finished it yet, so don't worry about that. Now we're ready to solder on a bezel. And I've done so many bezels so far that I just skipped ahead and made one. What I have here is a moonstone. I think it's a nice stone. Oh, it's actually a beautiful moonstone. There's no inclusions, there's no fractures in it at all. It's just perfect AAA quality, really. So, and then I want to just solder that down to there, and the moonstone will go on top. Just like that. Now we're going to have to cover up that hole because I don't know if you can see that, but it's going to show. You're going to have like a big hole where your moonstone is, but we'll take care of that. So I'm going to get this all ready for soldering because I have to set up some way to hold it up. And when I have that done, I'll bring you back for that part. Okay, so I have it set up on these tweezers that are holding it up, and I've already fluxed it and put in a few solder chips. This is the one case that I use less than hard solder, so I'm using a medium solder, still not going to soft. Even though it won't show, it actually will show at the edge just below, or just at the interface of the ring and the bezel. But medium will match it pretty good. Yeah, that looks good. You can see it all the way around. Alright, we're soldered. That goes into the, once again, into the pickle. And I'll meet you on the other side. I'll be right back. Okay, we've got everything done. Now it's just cleaning up the whole mess. And that just basically involves filing around the edges. You can get something that holds it like this, a clamp of some sort. There's many different types of clamps. Here's another one you can use, and that just screws down. I don't know why I prefer this one over that one. And take your time and go around the whole ring. One thing to be careful of is the bezel on top is fine silver. That's so that we can push it over easy. And so you gotta be careful when you're coming around there that you don't, like, or if you're holding this somewhere, if you hold it, push it into there, you're gonna deform that very, very, very easily. So again, like we did with the box, you just take off the edges until you start to see it coming in to the middle here, and that's where you stop and you start to use sandpaper. So we'll go around each side doing that. Let's just do this side a little bit. It just, you know, it just takes time. And be patient. I've learned more things by being impatient See it starting to come in? Maybe concentrate more on the top portion. You can see that it's starting to come in here. So I'm starting to get flush with the band in the inside. And so I know that it's time to move on. And that's happening on the top too, as you can see. So I'm going to go all the way around, do that, filing it, and then I'll begin to sand it. And I'll probably bring you back to the sanding. But sanding is just, we're going to take sanding sticks and carefully go, over the whole thing. Starting with a pretty mean grit and going to finer and finer grits. So I'm going to get that mostly done. Oh, wait a minute. Before I do that, let's also talk about the inside. So the inside, get a half round file. Do the same thing with the file as we did before. Again, it just takes time. Okay, so we have that, crudely polished. And now we'll spend some time on some sandpaper. Now, you should get yourself a nice set of sandpaper going down to pretty fine grits. This one goes down to 8,000, so I mean that is really, really fine. But this is 400, 600. It should be 800, but no, it's 1,000. Maybe I've used the 800. There's 4,000, 6,000, and 8,000. So, starting with your 400 grit, get a nice surface. Right off the bat, you start to get a nice surface. 400 is pretty smooth, and you do that all the way around to all the different places. I'll just do this one side for you, and then we'll go to. You should clean off your item before you change the grits, so that you're not contaminating it with a coarser grit. Yeah, you should be doing the figure eights like I showed you before. But I suppose it's not as important if you're not trying to get this exactly flat. So there we go on that grit. You can see this starting to look even nicer. And we'll go down to the next grit. Again, wipe it off. And proceed. And you can see that's starting to look quite shiny. And then it'll be finished on the buffer. So I'm going to do that. I'm not ready for that grit on that side there. I'm gonna do that and bring it back when we're ready to set the stone. Okay. Okay, so the ring's all done. Now it's just to set the stone. And of course we have that hole. It's not really even centered, but if you put the stone in there, it's gonna look goofy. It's gonna have like an eye or something. You see? So there's many things you can put on the bottom of it. Long time ago, they used to use sawdust or cork that you grind up, or I'm just going to put a piece of black paper on the bottom, and best way to make it is to get it like a soft surface, like a towel or something like that, and then just press down, and that'll give you the impression that you need to make the thing the right size. Because this bezel isn't exactly oval. The stone isn't exactly oval. It's just the way it is. So I'm going to cut that out. And moonstone, you really see the nice blue flash that moonstones have. So it doesn't need to be perfect, but plop it in there. Just like that. Put your moonstone in. And now we're ready to set it, so you don't see that little hole anymore. And so let me put this on my vise because I want a good surface or steady thing to push down on so that I can set the stone properly. Let me set that up and I'll be right back. Okay, so it's all nicely set up on there. And now it's just pushing over the bezel. And you know, you've seen me do this before, so go around, push it in first, get it nice and tight up against that stone. I know my fingers are in the way, but you gotta hold down this stone as you're doing this, so you're always gonna be, it's not gonna be easy to see. So that's pushed in all the way around, and now we just lop it over. Again, I always use these silly plastic things because, as I've said before, I don't have to worry about slipping and nicking up the surface. But and I think I've shown you many other ones that one can use. But just to refresh your memory, there's these pushers. A lot of people use them. And you just go around like that. This is more of a burnishing tool. Here's a nice tool for really pushing it over. There's just many varieties of that. This is probably one of the more common ones. You can also, if you have a, and maybe I'll show that in another video, but there's a hammer hand piece that connects to the flex shaft. And if you have a really stubborn bezel, or a thick one, or one that's, you know, sterling silver and thick, then that's available to use. With using that though, there is going to be cleanup. I also have this thing. It's a burnishing tool too, but it also is very nice for setting the stone. So that's pretty much set there. One can go around. One can do many things with a bezel. I'm going to save that for a video that's specifically on bezels. But you can go around the inside with a real sharp thing to really get them nice and crisp against the stone. You can burnish the edges. There's a lot of things, so hopefully I'll be able to show that to you soon. Okay, that's pretty much done. I think it needs a little more spiffying up, but essentially that's our ring. I'm going to spiffy it up a little bit and bring it back. And okay, so here we have at the end our two little box rings. One I did off camera and one I did with you guys. That was the first one, and this is the one we did before our moonstone setting. And I don't know if you see the little blue. So that's it. Kind of neat little rings, and they work nice. They look nice. So, thank you for watching, and I hope I see you again sometime. Goodbye.